I'd like to take a look at the Excel course. I'll just show you the topics that we'll be looking at, and that's sorting, filtering, goal seek, if statement, and so on. So let me get started on those. First, let's consider sorting. If we have these names and amounts here, what I've done is to copy those already in. And if you have my manual, then you can just paste them from the manual there on the right hand side and just paste them in. Makes life easy. So I'll just have a look at that in Excel. So what we want to do is to simply sort by the name. Now you need to keep an eye on them. So L's got 10, so just make sure that L ends up with 10. And just show how they are sorted in pairs if we do a simple sort. So to do a simple sort, I could highlight the ones that I want, or I could just click in that first column. If I want to sort on these, I'd click in that column. So I'll do a simple sort, you see, by clicking up here on the A to Z, and let's see what happens. Now just note the order at the moment, and when I click, L is at the top. Now notice that L has got his 10. But let's take a look, because look at Joe, for example. Now he's got 20, and he's also got 18, but notice that the 20 and the 18 are not sorted. Maybe we'd like to sort everything. I see just by luck that Ed has got his stuff sorted, but that's because they're in that order in the first place. I'll show you, because if I undo Control Z, you can see that Ed has got his 10 here and 14 and 16, and Joe has got his 20 and 18. But how do I sort everything in secondary order, if you like, so that not only are these sorted, but these are sorted correspondingly? So what we'll do is to put our mouse anywhere selection in the table, and then click up here, that sort there. So I'll click on sort, and then sort by. So notice it's selected, and look at this up here. It says, that's important. Can you see that? It says, my data has headers. Now that means that name and amount will not form part of the sort. So Excel is having a pretty good guess as to what to do. Clever little package, Excel. So, but if that was data up the top, then you would uncheck this. So for the moment, I want to sort on name for a start, values, and A to Z. You could make it descending if you want to, but that's fine. Then what I want to do now is to add a level, you see, because I want to then sort by amount. Sorting by values and smallest to largest, so we know we're on the right track here. So if I click OK on this, you'll notice now that Joe has been sorted as well. So they've all been sorted by name, A to Z, but they've also correspondingly been sorted by amount for each separate person. Filtering, I now want to filter out, for example, all the New Yorks or all the Londons or all the food and the clothing. Let's make that table. I deliberately haven't completed it just to show you a few little tricks. You can obviously drag down if you want to repeat some data, but you can also, another way of repeating data is go down here and say pick from drop-down list. That just takes all the ones previously and summarizes them, and then you could click London there. Another way of doing it is Control apostrophe, a quick key, so Control apostrophe, and that puts the previous one in as well. The easy way to repeat those, of course, is just to drag them down like that. I want to now pick out all the New York, for example. So I'll make sure, the most important thing is to make sure that you're clicked inside the table, and then we'll click on filter, and then you can see you can drop down here. What I tend to do is just get rid of all the selection and then choose, say, London, and that brings up all the Londons. And for example, if I wanted all the food, well, let me take off the filtering that I've got at the moment, so I can get rid of that. Well, best to return them to as we had them, so we could just select all in this case, and that brings everything back. So we've still got our filter on. If you want to turn the filtering off completely, you can just click on that. But what I'll do is just for the exercise is just pick out As I say, what I do is just get rid of that, and then I can select clothing, for example, and then click OK. As I say, if I want to take the filtering off completely, then I would just click that, and that would take all the filtering off. Subtotals. Let's try and sort this table. You notice that the data must be sorted first of all in order to make subtotals. You must remember that. So if we've got that particular table, you want to make subtotals, then, for example, we'll just make sure we're clicked in the table somewhere, and then we go up onto the data in the ribbon here, and you can see subtotals up there. So click on subtotals. Now it says for each change in store, that means down here, we're subtotaling for the stores, like New York and London. We use the sum function. That means we add them up. We don't sort of count them or that sort of thing. We'll find the maximum, so we're actually adding them up. We add the subtotal to the sales. Well, the sales is what we're trying to do, add up the sales. Replace, well, there ain't no those subtotals yet, but we get the idea. Summary below data. So I click OK. And then you can see we've got all the New York totals here and the London totals, that's been added, and also the grand total has been added as well. Well, you can see this outlining over here, so you can have, you can make a grand total here, or you can do just London, New York totals, or you can go back to where you were, or you could just do them individually, and so you could just have a play around with those outlining facilities. In order to remove the subtotals, then we could just click anywhere in our table and then go to our subtotal, and then it says here remove all. So I just remove all the subtotals and they're gone. Personally, I'm not too keen on subtotals for the following reason. I'm just going to move my data across a bit, and let's say I've got some important data over here. I'll just make it 1 to 5 at the moment. Let's say that is important data, and what I'll do is to, well, I can see I've got a problem here. I'm just going to move this over a little bit further there. Okay, and now I'm going to find the subtotals of this. So I can put my subtotal, and then it's the same idea, and so I can subtotal, and it's subtotaled, okay, New York total, but you see how it's put another line, extra line in there, and here and here. So it does mess around with your spreadsheet, and that's why I don't like it. If you want to do subtotals, which is what I do, I put them on, just drag them onto a separate worksheet and work out my subtotals on that worksheet. I'll just take the subtotals off. So if you remember, we go to subtotal and then remove all, and then we're back to normal. Goal seek will automatically change one of the values in the cell to reach a target which is in another cell. So let's make this simple table to add up two numbers. I've got 6 and 4, so I could use the sum formula, or I could just add them up using a simple formula. 6 plus 4 is 10. Now, you might think this is a rather silly question, but what I want to do is to make that 10 9 by changing this cell here 3. Well, that's a very simple, all we do is 9 subtract 6 is 3. But let's get Excel to do it. The way Excel will do it is by trial and error. It'll change the value in A2 until it hits the value 9. Let's see how that works. So I've got my cursor in A3. That's the cell that we want to, that's our target. So I click on data up the top here. A bit hard to remember. It's under what if analysis, goal seek. And then it says I want to set cell A3 to value, as I said, was 9 by changing cell A2. So I'm going to get Excel to solve it by clicking OK, and sure enough it comes up with the value of 9. And if I click OK, then I'll accept that solution. Well, you may not be very impressed, but please try to get the idea that Excel is doing an iteration. It's changing the value in here, trying it out until it reaches the target value which you told it to reach, which was 9. You might be slightly more impressed if I did another example. Let's say I first of all, I want to find the totals of these horizontally and vertically. I could just go into my sigma, and that adds up vertically and horizontally. And this is the grand total over here. Let's say that I wanted to make this grand total 700 by changing something over here. So don't forget, always put your mouse in the target cell, and once again go to Data, What If Analysis, Goal Seek. So you want to change it. Don't change it too far. It can cause problems. Change it to value 700, which is not too different, by changing cell. Now take your pick. You can click any of these cells here. I'll just choose one at random and then click OK. Now just watch the 704. It does change to 700, which is fine. So this is the solution that we can accept. You can have other examples where a salesman has to reach a certain target, all using Goal Seek. We now wish to link two worksheets together. So the value, if the value changes in one, it changes in the other. So I'll start off by putting a simple bit of data into A1 of that sheet. Now one way of doing it is to go, if I go now, if you look on the bottom there, if I go on to sheet 2, no, it's already done. Let me just delete that and pretend that doesn't exist, and we'll start again. So what we do is to type an equal sign and then go back to sheet 1 and then click on it. You'll notice that it says up here equals sheet 1 pling A1. Well, pling, exclamation mark, shriek, call it what you like. Sheet 1 is the name of the sheet. Obviously we're on sheet 2, but notice the name of the sheet was sheet 1. And A1 is the cell reference, which is just A1. Not, it could be $A, $1. So I'll just click the tick, and then on sheet 2, you see I've got my 100 as well. Let me go back to sheet 1. That was the original 100, and now sheet 2, you see, is also 100. So let me go back to sheet 1 and change A1, and go to sheet 2, and you'll find that that's been changed as well. Let me now just delete this formula and start again. I will show you a completely different way of doing it. First of all, I'm going to just copy, right-click and copy, and then go on to sheet 2 and right-click onto A1, and you'll see here that I've got Paste Special. So if I click on Paste Special, this is the important bit down here, which is Paste Link. And watch, as I click Paste Link, you'll see the formula go into the formula bar, just as we did before. But you could well just type that in letter by letter. It would have the same effect. And of course, let's just check that this still works. If I go back to here, now notice that we've got these ants running around the box. I'm going to press the Escape key to take those off. So if I change that to something else, and then click the tick, and then go into sheet 2, you'll see that that's changed as well. What about this time, if we take the value in sheet 3 is going to be the sum of the two values in sheet 1 and sheet 2. Let me just, I've got a number in sheet 1, so I'm going to make a number in sheet 2. I'll just type it, that'll just get rid of the formula. So all I've got now is a number here and a number here. And on sheet 3, I want to find the total. So if I click in here, and then I find the easiest way is to just press the equal key, go onto sheet 1, click on this, but make sure now you type a plus sign, and then go onto sheet 2, click the number, and you can see the formula building up here, and then click OK, and then take a look in sheet 3, you see that's the total of those two. So in sheet 1, I've got 121, now I've got 100, and you can see the total is 221. Just to make sure that that's working, I'll go back to sheet 1 and change that to something else, and then you'll see in sheet 3 we have the result, which has also been changed. So it's a dynamic update. The if statement, very important statement. People have a bit of trouble with it, but it's really quite straightforward. It consists of 3 bits. Here we have a test at the front, the bit which goes in if it's true, and the bit which goes in if it's false. Let's see how that works. This number is bigger than this number. I'm going to put a formula in here. Equals if. People often forget to use the equal sign in front. So if this is bigger, I'll click on this. If that's bigger than that, then you can see it's giving us a clue down here. Logical test. We have just done the logical test, or specified the logical test. The value if true, value if false. Right. You have to decide to put something in. If it's bigger, shall we say 4.5, any old number, or another number if it's false. Now the way this works is, if A1 is bigger than A2, well it is at the moment obviously, it will put the first number in, which is the 4.5. Otherwise it'll put the 6.5. Let's see if that works. It puts the 4.5 in, and the reason is that A1 is bigger than A2, so it puts in the first, well the second actually, part of the if statement. The if statement comes in 3 bits. The logical test, the number if true, the number if false. How do I make the 6.5 appear here? What do I need to do to this? I need to make that less, any old number which is less than 30, and you can see the 6.5 appears. Why is that? Because this is not a true statement, it's false. If it's false, the second bit of the if statement is placed in the cell. We could also have cell references for this as well. For example, the numbers that need to go in might appear somewhere else. Here, for example, I can put in any old numbers that you like, that go any old numbers. It could be text, as I'll show you in a moment. But I'll just use the same that I was using before. So here, instead of if A1 is bigger than A2, put in 4.5, I can put in the cell reference. So if I highlight that and click on the 4.5, you can see E1 has gone into my formula. I can do the same thing with the 6.5. I'll highlight that and click on that cell, and you can see now that if A1 is bigger than A2, that is bigger than that. Put in E1, which is this. Otherwise, put in E2, which is this. So at the moment, is it bigger? It's not. That is less than that. So looking at the if statement, that bit goes in. That is to say the 6.5. I'll just test that by putting a bigger number than 30 in here. What happens in this case? This is bigger than this, so that in the test is a true statement. So when it's true, the first bit goes in, which is the E1, which is the 4.5. We can also have text. Let me just get rid of this. So if instead of E1, we could put in a bit of text like a letter, say a bit of text like big or something like that, any old text, but it must be inverted commas if it's text. And then I can put in here small, smaller or something, and then click away. Now you'll notice that this is bigger than this. So in the if statement, this is a true statement. If that's a true statement, the first bit goes in, which is the big. If not, the second bit goes in, which is the small. So if I click the tick, obviously the big goes in. But if I type here a number less than that, then the second bit of the text goes in, telling you that the number is smaller than that one. But that could be, don't get confused by big and small. That could be any text at all. It could be like okay or not okay or try again or whatever. Let's take an example of using an if statement. We have here a worksheet. If somebody works 40 hours, then the overtime limit is 30. After 30 hours, they get paid a special rate, which in this case is 12.5. Up to that, they get 10.5. So in this example, you see they've worked 40 hours, and the overtime limit is 30. That means they've worked 10 hours of overtime and 30 ordinary hours. So then we multiply these together to get the totals, and then we finally get a grand total. So it's simply a matter of inputting the hours that the person worked, and we can work out the total amount of pay. So for example, if the person worked 20 hours, well, they didn't do any overtime. That's not quite correct. That should be 20 ordinary hours. So if it's less, it's going to be 20. And then we'll be able to multiply all of that together to get 210 in that particular case. Well, Rome wasn't built in a day, so what we need to do is to go back and construct a formula. So I will delete this, as a matter of fact, and just concentrate on this bit here, the overtime hours that we want. As we said before, the overtime hours, if the person works over 40, then the overtime hours is 10. Then you would say, well, that looks like quite a simple subtraction to me. So you might try equals that, subtract that. Well, indeed, that works if it's over 30, but what happens if it's under? So if we tried 20, then you can see, well, that's not what we want. So, but it's got something to do with subtracting these two, but what we need is an if statement. So we could try equals if it is bigger than that. So if the person works over 30 hours, then what will they have? They will have the difference between these two, which is that subtract that. On the other hand, what will the person have? So I put a comma in there because we're doing the third part now. On the other hand, what will the person have if the hours are less? None. Let's see if that works. If the person works over the overtime limit, then it brings the difference. But if it works under the overtime limit, it produces 0. So we're on the right track now. If we were to put the rate in here, which I think was 12.5 previously, then we could simply multiply those two together and get the total so far, and then finally get the grand total. Well, let's just check if that works. In this case, if I make it 40, then you'll see you get 10 overtime hours multiplied by the rate, gives you that total, ultimately will give the grand total. To work out the ordinary hours, it's the same sort of thing, and I could leave that as an exercise. Don't forget that if the hours go above, then the ordinary hours is just the overtime limit. But if it's below, then the ordinary hours is in fact just that B2. So we could leave that to you as an exercise.